Paul Severino, kind enough to join us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Does a great job with the MLB Network, and you can catch him today on Intentional Talk at 3:30 plus MLB Network. I told you guys, DVR, get ready to record this. Mr. Padre tomorrow at 8 o'clock, newest installment of the MLB Network Presents series profiling one of the greatest hitters that I've ever seen, Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn. So with that, talk a little baseball. We welcome in Paul. Paul, how you been, pal?
I'm been all right, and I'm telling you right now, you're only getting canned, cliched answers from me today. Okay,
Let me ask you something.
110%. That's it. That's
I was gonna say, when you get all the newest inductees in the Hall of Fame, do you guys sit there and say, "Hey, how you feeling right about now?"
You know, I honestly, I had the pleasure, the opportunity, the blessing, I guess you could say, to host the show, host MLB Tonight last Thursday, which was the day after the Hall of Fame announcement. So we're lucky enough. We're kind of in the shadows of New York City, obviously. So they do the whole, big media event thing in the city in the afternoon, and then they swing by our studios at night. And I was able to interview the four guys, and then that's the challenge, like trying to
get something out of them. Yep.
Yeah, because not only are they answering a million questions already, and they've already kind of said everything that they need to say, but you obviously, that's one of the things you want to stay away from is, hey, how does it feel? It feels great. Next question.
Exactly, right.
That's all I had prepared. Thank you for the time.
Well, no, you guys do a great job with that, and you did a great job with it. We'll get to the Hall of Fame in a couple moments. Let's talk some of the moves off the field, if you will. And listen, when you look at what's going on, not busy, but we saw some of the blockbuster moves with Stanton and then Kane, and then now we see Yelich, who's been reportedly unhappy with new Marlins management. Now he's shipped off with the Brewers, and I mentioned that they make a move for Kane. I mean, you're talking about a player in Yelich now, just 26 years old, under a team control with the Brewers right now for 5 years. He's due to make about $58.25 over that time, but now the Brewers are showing a lot of activity in the offseason. Are you surprised, first of all, by their aggressiveness, and then number two, are you surprised by the way the Marlins are basically? It's just it's almost like a fire sale now.
Well, I'll start from the Brewers' perspective, and I think that what the Brewers are doing is basically kind of what they have to do. I mean, they've got a good young core there. They had their little window of winning that kind of closed on them, and they had to replenish their farm system. They got some good pieces back, and they built a nice little core. And then they got the benefit of Yelich having a pretty team-friendly deal. It's 40 some odd guaranteed just for round numbers, and then it can get up to 50 something. But so if you put that 40 guaranteed together with the Lorenzo Cain 80, yeah, it seems like a lot. It's 120, but you got two terrific outfielders who still are, these are not, guys signing a 5-year deal at 37 years old. I mean, they're both either in their prime or, still on the outskirts of their prime. I know Kane's in his early 30s, but even at that, he's a young 30 because he didn't pick up baseball for a while. So if you split the difference, you're paying those guys an average of $60 million over 4 or 5 years. I mean, those are absolute bargains. So, and it still should leave a little bit in the coffers in terms of them acquiring some starting pitching too. So I think that the Brewers are going about things, the way that they want to. And if it's a situation where the market kind of comes back to them, then yeah, I mean, I think it's a situation where you have to jump on it if you're them, because you are not going to be out on, the big time contracts an awful lot. So, they I think it was $30 million over their max free agent signing. Kane, I think, surpassed Matt Garza by like $30 million. So, I think that this part of the country for sure, seeing the Yankees and the Mets and the Phillies and the Red Sox spending $200 million like it's nothing. That's one thing, but I mean, to think that they nearly doubled their most lucrative contract on the free agent market really says something. And winning is it's fleeting, for sure. Now on the other side with the Marlins, I think that they're going about it the right way now. I think that not all these moves are created equally. I think that the Stanton move was strictly to get that money off the books.
Agree.
Strictly to create some kind of flexibility and something that they needed to do. I think that was what that was all about. The D. Gordon thing was probably about the same sort of deal. But then the Ozuna trade, it got them some pieces back, some arms from St. Louis, or an arm from St. Louis and Alcantara. And then with Yelich, that got a big return too. So if they were, and I know we look around at the different scouting services and stuff, and I know we always kind of fall back to MLB.com, and I know that they don't give like a bottom 10 or a bottom 15. Right. They just kind of look at the top. But the Marlins farm system 2 or 3 weeks ago was 27th or below. So if they've bumped themselves up 13, 14, 15 spots by trading 2 guys, then why wouldn't you do that? I think that it's a fan base that has, certainly been kicked in the mouth a couple of times. They've never lost a postseason game. They could say that, but I think that it's a situation with the new ownership group right now where they have to try to reinvent, retool, re-envision where this franchise is going. And, look at the guys that they did have last year and the year before that, and Yelich and Ozuna and Stanton, and still didn't make the playoffs. So why not free yourself up a little bit and figure out a different way to go about it, and not just aim for a 3-year window, aim for something that, their prominent owner, Derek Jeter, had, and that's 20 years of winning. So if you can build something to be sustainable like that, I think that you do it. And I understand that, all the concern, and again, rightfully so, that's a franchise or a fan base that's been punted around a bit, but I think that they're going about this the right way, for as painful as it might be right now.
Yeah, Diaz, Lewis, and Brinson, they're supposedly top 10 prospects in the Brewers organization. You're right, you always have to replenish the farm system. The Phillies, there was a stretch where they weren't able to do it, then they did it, and now they are, and that's certainly a team that a lot of people believe could contend or at least be more competitive. Maybe not this year, perhaps next. We'll get into the NL East in a moment. I'm curious to get your thoughts. When you mentioned the Stanton move, Stanton to the Yanks, now, does this put more pressure on Aaron Boone now as a manager? Because if you look at it, the first thing I would think, because I was speaking to someone about this, I know Aaron Judge is probably extremely fired up and excited about this move, but what does it do for the comfort level of a guy like Aaron Judge, and doesn't put more pressure on Aaron Boone where, hey, this team needs to go out every night and score 10 runs?
Well, I think that from the Judge perspective, I think that I don't think he's just saying the right things. I think he truly means it. Last year, I was fortunate enough to do the AAA All-Star game, called the AAA All-Star game, and we had Al Pedrique, whose name had been thrown around for potentially the guy who was going to take over as the skipper. And he has seen a lot of these guys through the minor leagues and managed these guys through the minor leagues, this now young crop of baby bombers, if you will. And I asked him about Aaron Judge, and this was, the All-Star break, so Judge had like 6,000 home runs or something like that. And I just asked, is this, was he always this humble, or was he humbled by the struggles at the end of the 2016 season and striking out half the time? And he said, no, he's always been that guy. He has always been the humble guy. And I think in the same vein that, Derek Jeter wasn't really putting on any sort of a front. I think Jeter's main objective always was to win. And if he went 0 for 3 or 5 for 5, if the team won, then that's all that mattered. And I think that that's the same sort of thing that the Yankees now have with Aaron Judge. I think that his struggles, both at the end of the 2016 season and the adjustments that he made and the maturity that he showed in doing so, helped him quite a bit. And I also think that, whether it was an injury or struggles or whatever it was in the, just after the All-Star break before he came back on in September, I think he's got a pretty good perspective somehow, for such a young major leaguer, but a good perspective on, this is a team game. And, I could hit 55 home runs and we could still not, make it past the league championship series. It's a team game. The team's got to come through, and we've all got to do our part. And So I think that from that perspective, I don't think Judge will be bothered by it at all. I think, if anything, he'll probably feed off of it. In terms of Aaron Boone, I mean, I think that, it's kind of what I used to say back in the day when the Yankees would, bring on big free agent after big free agent after big free agent, and I would always say, well, they're running out of excuses now.
Yeah, you got to win, right?
Yeah, so I think that, hopefully there's enough of a different type of dynamic throughout the lineup, throughout the bench, that it's not 9 of the same player in the lineup. So therefore, if a slugger gets hot, that everybody's hot and they're scoring 20 runs a night, and if the slugger gets cold, then they're all getting cold and they're not scoring for 2 weeks. There's going to be ebbs and flows in a 162 game season. We all get that, but hopefully the Yankees have enough of a different dynamic, different types of guys that they'll be able to get on base and score runs a multitude of different ways, that when they are hitting 2, 3, 4 home runs a night, then great. But when they're not, we could still figure out a way to manufacture runs. And oh, by the way, the pitching staff is still pretty good. That you're never going to turn down 12 runs a night, but that they shouldn't have to score 12 just to win games.
Little baseball on Monday. Rich Quinones here. We'll take you up to 2. And again, Paul Severino does a great job with the MLB Network. On MLB Network, you can catch him on Intentional Talk today at 3:30. Plus, you have MLB Network's premiere of Mr. Padre tomorrow at 8 p.m., which is the newest installment of MLB Network Presents series profiling Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn. And again, kind enough to join us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Paul, I'm curious, when you look at all the changes in the NL East, and not even you start talking about the players, but you got to go down now and you look at all the managerial, the carousel that is the NL East. And let's take it to our backyard for a moment with the Mets and the Nats, and then of course the Philadelphia Phillies. To me, Mickey Callaway, his job, I mean, I think a lot of times the mark, especially for a new manager, a young manager, you got to be able to just control that pitching staff and make sure that pitching staff is healthy. This has been the Mets' bugaboo over the last several years. As you kind of gloss over the moves that the Mets made, bringing in Callaway, the Nats, and then the Phillies with Kapler, how would you kind of handicap, and I know we're not near April, but just looking forward, how do you kind of handicap the NL East?
I still think that the Washington Nationals are the team to beat in that division. And I think that for Dave Martinez, it's going to be, well, for all 3 of these guys, it's going to be their first time through, so there's going to be an adjustment period. I think that it's probably made a little bit easier in Washington for Dave, in the sense that he's got a lot of talent to work with there, and a lot of talent to, maybe help cover up any sort of adjustment type mistakes that there might be made. But at the same time, maybe there won't be that many, only because he'd been a bench coach for so long under such a terrific manager and Joe Madden in a couple of different spots, and obviously to a World Series a couple of years back with the Cubs. So, I think from that perspective, he's got a little bit different type of experience, I guess. And I'm not saying that it's better or worse or anything than the other two. I'm just saying it's not. Even though it's his first managerial job, I think this day and age, the bench coaches do so much in terms of the X's and O's through the course of a game that, you're on top of it a little bit more. And again, so I think that the Nats are probably the most loaded in that division. As far as the New York Mets go, I think you nailed it in terms of, this pitching staff has been the strength of this team. Whether it turns out to be that way at the end of the day or not, that's kind of what they've gone into these last 3, 4, 5 years with, is the strength of this pitching staff. So, as the team control years, I guess you could say, begin to dwindle for this club, I think it's going to be pretty incumbent on Mickey Callaway to get whatever he can get out of these guys and figure out the best way possible to keep them healthy. Because, again, I don't care if it's DeGrom and Syndergaard and Harvey, or if it's, you, me, and Joe Schmo from across the street. If we're not healthy, we're not helping the team.
Right.
So I think that that's going to be a big part of it. And certainly the pitching background will help. And maybe it's, I would imagine, I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of, either managers or pitching coaches or whatever, if there's the pitching coach or the assistant pitching coach or the bullpen coach or now a manager as well, as long as the player, I guess, is getting the message and helping the team, then and not going over, if let's just say, make this as simple as possible. If the pitching coach says, hey, throw your fastball more, and you as the pitcher go to the manager and say, hey, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to throw my cutter more often. Like, that's going to be an issue.
That's not good.
If it's going to be a collaborative effort of how can I be the most effective me I can be, then you just have another voice having the pitching coach, the bullpen, whatever, and the manager who's got a background in pitching. You have more voices involved, I think. So that's kind of the Mets side of things. And then with the Phillies, I think that it's going to be an interesting time for them, sure. I mean, this year might not be the greatest year for them. They might win 70 games. I mean, I have no idea. But at the same time, I think that they are certainly a baseball-hungry fan base for sure. They've had some winners along the way. I don't want to say their fair share because there's certainly been some lean years mixed in, but they had that window with Utley and Rollins and Ryan Howard for a while, and they were kind of in the mix and, maybe hanging on for too long set them back a bit. But, not a lot of money on the books going forward. An interesting sign to bring in Santana, but good, I think, because you never know. It's a situation in a city, in a ballpark that if they want to go out and spend big, they certainly can. And it looks as though they've also developed or beginning to develop a farm system that could create either the core of the winning team or the complementary players around some of the big time free agents that they may go out and grab.
I got about a minute before I let you get out of here. Just wrap it up on the Hall of Fame. It's always interesting. You can debate this, every single day, and that's the beauty of it. I looked at Edgar Martinez, and I saw his numbers go up, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's eventually going to get in. Then I look at a guy like Andrew Jones, and I'm like, wow, we're talking 7.3% of the vote. And then I made a case, and I believe you guys didn't. I think it was Brian made a strong case, and I talked about this the other day, and guys were getting on me for Fred McGriff. I'm just curious, those two that I kind of mentioned, forget about Martinez. Do you think eventually, it's going to be difficult for a guy like Andrew Jones again, and because of the second half of his career with staying healthy and the injuries? And then McGriff, I just think, to me, Fred McGriff is a Hall of Famer. I just think he's a product of playing in an era where it was overshadowed by steroids.
I think so too, and I think what's weird, and I go back to it, even though I think at this point we should be smart enough to figure these things out. But if there was no strike in '94 and they played all 162 in '95, you don't think he could have hit 7 more home runs and gotten to 500?
Yep.
And if he gets to 500, is it an absolute lock? One would think yes, but then again, I mean, he's unless he goes up the charts like a screaming Mimi, he's going to fall off the ballot next year. So, I don't think that the 7 home runs shy of 500 is like the only thing. That one is surprising to me, just that he hasn't been closer. I don't know if he's necessarily a Hall of Famer, but he's really just stagnated the last few years. It's kind of weird. And then with Andrew Jones, to me, that one's really interesting too. I mean, I think that to be at 7 and continue to get another look as we go forward is important, and I think that he'll jump up the board as the years go on and get more consideration. I mean, he was stellar for 10 or 12 years at the beginning of his career, and then again, you just play forever, and maybe it hurts you whether that's right or wrong. But in that same vein, and again, I'll make this quick, is Johan Santana doesn't even get a second look, and that's what's crazy. I mean, this guy was the best pitcher in baseball for 3 years and pretty darn good for 8 or 9. And to not even get a second look, I think that's unfortunate.
All right. Great stuff as always. We'll catch you today, 3:30. I can't wait for the Tony Gwynn. I had to go back and I know I got to let you get out of here, but look at his numbers again. There was only one time in his career where he batted under 300. That was his first, as a rookie. I mean, there's a stretch, Paul, 358, 394, 368, 353, 372. I mean, And I know he made that switch from basketball to baseball, and the due diligence, watching video and perfecting his swing. I mean, is he in your mind, as I let you get out of here? I mean, is he arguably one of the greatest hitters you've ever seen?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. I think anywhere he could, because he could put it anywhere on the
yes.
field. He's unshiftable, and obviously he played in a time in which there weren't many shifts. But I've heard different guys say this. It's like, well, if you just put it down the middle, that's how you get him out. They're trying to get him on the corner.
No, he can hit everywhere.
Pulling it, or he was unbelievable. He's fun to watch, and I've seen bits and pieces of Mr. Padre, and I think it's going to be really good, and it's going to be really moving.
Great, awesome. Look forward to it. Great stuff as always, Paul. And I appreciate the non-short and cliched answer.
Oh yeah, no, I wanted to give it 110%.
Well, that's right. And as always, you thank God for the opportunity and all that good stuff.
Hi, Mom.
All right, listen, we'll catch you on MLB Network. We'll definitely talk before April. Appreciate a couple moments, pal.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, you got it. Take care of yourself, Paul Severino.